Hey guys, my name is Pip, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how I made my Spartan boot risers. Now these are 4-inch risers on the bottom of the set of boots to make me taller when I'm wearing my Spartan armor. And as you'll see, they're not the highest quality. To kind of rush through them, I could have definitely waited for the foam clay to dry longer. I could have just used better materials other than foam clay. Definitely different things I could have done to make it better. However, it's functional. It's functional for what I need it for, and that's good enough for me. So I'm going to show you how I did it because I kind of figured it out as I went. If you have any questions or any tips of how to do it better, feel free to leave a comment down below. Without further ado, let's get into it. I'll show you how I made these boot risers. First step of this, I want to add my risers. I'm trying to get myself about 4 inches with these, which means I want to have it angled up. And the way I'm going to do this is by having an EVA foam wedge in there. So the first step of that is making a pattern of the boot sole, so I can kind of gauge what it is I'm looking at here as far as verticality goes. It would help if I had a pencil ready to go. See here, this is about our boot shape. I'm actually going to go and I'm going to square off these divots. You see what I've done here is I've added the straight lines here and here to flatten out the pattern. Now I'm going to get a kind of harder trace on this, a more defined line that I'm going to cut out with scissors. And this is going to serve as the base for the boot. Now I'm going to cut this out. Alright, now it's an EVA foam setup. This is 10mm UVA foam by SKS Props. I'm going to have a link down in the description for this foam. I'm going to take this pattern now, I'm going to cut out a left, and then I'm going to flip it and I'm going to cut out the right as well. I usually trace this with Sharpie. A little bit of a trick that I have is to hold down the pattern, I like to use sewing weights. This is really just to kind of help me get better, or hold the pattern in the same place without having to move things. I could also, if it was a smaller piece, I could use pins to pin it into place, and I will likely do that for a later process. But this one's kind of a relatively big piece and relatively simple. This will be just fine. I'm going to take a Sharpie and trace around the edges. There we go, that's both patterns cut. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to slice it in smaller sections. And to do that, I'm going to use this hobby craft knife here. Alright, and then from here I'm going to jump forward and cut this out with this hobby knife. It's important that you try to cut as vertical as possible with this, because we're going to be sandwiching it. There we go, that's the first piece, and I'm gonna do that a couple more times. All right, so now I've cut all my pieces for my wedges. You can see they're all stacked up here. The way that I did this was I took the boot here. This boot is angled in a way where the toe kind of kicks up. So I lay that toe flat here, and then I would wedge these pieces of EVA foam in, see where they start, and then mark it on the template and work my way up from there. That creates these wedges here that we now get to glue down in a big fashion. Also, you notice all of my edges aren't super clean here. That's okay. I'll be covering them after this is all said and done, so it won't really matter. I will be covering the cleaner, like how I do clean cuts and stuff with EVA foam once I get to the actual armor making. But for now, this is good enough for these wedges. So I'm going to start by gluing these together. For this, I'm going to need some glue. There we go. I prefer barge contact cement. This stuff is my favorite thing for EVA foam. It this EVA foam very, very well. Now this is kind of an older can, which means the can is super duper stuck. If your barge can is stuck, I found the best thing to use is actually channel locks. That's what I found is the best way to get a stuck can of barge open. Don't forget that there's a brush attached to the lid, so don't just pry it off. Now this is really important. You should wear a respirator to this or work in a ventilated room. This room is particularly well ventilated right now. I have the window open right next to me, so ultimately you should be wearing a respirator. It's kind of nasty stuff. It's acetone. So I'm gonna take this, and the way that barge contact cement works is it's a two-sided thing. So you apply it to both sides of the equation here, and then once it dries for a little bit, then you can stick them together. It's about 5 minutes per repetition. Alright, there we go. Both sides of this are painted now, and I'm going to wait about 5 minutes for this to dry before I stick them together, so I'm going to start preparing a bunch of the other pieces. Now, the trick to being fast with EVA foam with contact cement is working on multiple parts at the same time. Because contact cement takes a while to dry before it's ready to stick on, if you start gluing other parts, by the time that I'm done gluing the first batch, the first set will be ready to adhere. So that's kind of one of the cheat codes to being really fast when it comes to doing foam work and using contact cement. So we are back. I had my phone died for a little bit, so the camera just might be a little bit different. The first batch of drawing is now done, and now I'm going to show you how these are kind of, a little bit tacky. I'm going to take these, I'm going to line up the heels, like so. It's really good to try to get it in the same spot. I'm going to do my best here. Try to make this as perfect as possible. You just press the two pieces together, try to make them as flat as possible. Our first sandwich. Now I just gotta do that a bunch of different times. Okay, so we've now finished our wedges here, our little wedge sandwiches. And if we look at the boot here, from the inside heel of the boot to where it sits right here, about, I line it up properly. Kind of hard to line it up a little bit. Alright, so we check this, and we check our thing. I have about a 4-inch lift. This top edge is about where the inside of the heel is. About a 4-inch lift here inside the boot while wearing it, which is pretty substantial. The next step is going to be hot gluing this boot down to this foam sandwich. From there we're going to be using foam clay to fill up the gaps here, and then we're going to be doing a fabric overlay as well as adding tread to the bottom. So that is what is next. Let's start with hot gluing these guys down. Okay, a little bit of time's passed since the last clip. I tried to do this a couple different ways. I wasn't really happy with the results, so I've been spending a little bit of time re-engineering the attachment here. I did it on the other boot, which is off camera over there. So I kind of have a grasp of what I'm doing now, which is good. It was my original plan, but I didn't, I executed it. Either way, the next step here, after we have our wedge built, is we're gonna take high temp hot glue, and we're gonna use that to essentially glue this boot down to this foam. The way we're gonna do that is by squeezing it in all of these little gaps between the boot and the foam to fill up this area. Right, and that should give a good enough bond to the boot for our purposes here. I have a hot glue gun here, and I'm just gonna start filling in this. It's really important to use high temp hot glue here because you really want to like goop it down in there as much as possible. I'm going to throw on some music and keep working at this. This is going to take me a minute, and I will come back once all of the edges are glued, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, here's the
First tip from the future, there's gonna be 2 in this video. First and foremost, when doing the hot gluing that we just did, make sure you try to cover or get as much hot glue up and under the boot as possible. You'll see issues later in the video where some air gets trapped between the boot and the sole, and as I stepped on it, tried to squeeze out, and it was kind of a big problem. So try to do as much coverage of the hot glue as possible. All right. See you in the next future update.
Alright, so I finished gluing up this piece. You can see there's a glue all the way around the edge here on every part of the boot. Now next, I'm going to take the Dremel. I'm going to do a couple of things. First off, as we've lifted this heel up, there's this extra ridge here. I'm going to Dremel this down so it's flat with the heel here. And then I'm also going to take off some of the sharper edges here for the next step. That's all Dremel down. Now this is a much better heel shape. It's about flat. And now I'm going to go over this whole thing in the foam plate. So now we're going to basically be bridging the gap between this flat plate and this ridge line of the boot. You might dust the dust off with me real quick. This little thing is a fantastic shop tip. I'll put a link in the description to one of these. It's a electric air duster. It's fantastic. I just have a cup of water here. Don't worry, it's my sacrificial paint mud. Now we have the foam clay part. Spartan's kind of a pain in the ass. I really don't like doing it, but I'm going to do it. So here's my foam clay here. I also have another jug right here if I run out of this stuff. And I'm going to start by getting my hands wet. This is going to help us maintain smoothness and prevent from sticking to our hands. Because the whole goal of this is I want it to be as smooth as possible. I'm not doing any like crazy sculpting or detail work, it's just bridging. So everywhere that I want foam clay on, I'm gonna get wet with water. Alright, just dive right in. So wet my hands first. It's super sticky. So you know, the reason I'm doing this foam clay is really purely cosmetic. The hot glue and EVA foam are really the structure of this heel. This is just like a very, very nice edge to the boot. So it disappears behind the armor that's going to go in front of this. That's really the big thing. So to be as smooth as possible for it not to be visible, but also I want to have a smooth and solid surface for me to mount onto. And once all of this foam clay dries, it will be EVA foam, which I can then contact cement directly on with the foam. As I keep, you can't really see it on camera, but I keep wetting my hands over and over again, my little cup here. And that's just to prevent it from sticking to my hands. This method of keeping it incredibly wet to try to get it smooth and spread out. It's almost like trying to sculpt with mud. It's not the easiest thing to do, but no doubt, use water to smooth it. Step here, I'm going to take this little sculpting tool and I'm going to basically cut out or sculpt around the ridges of that rubber section. So you can see here, that is the line where the rubber shoe is. I'm going to take out everything that is. And we're going to address that line all the way around the boot. Now, kind of trimmed that line down, I'm going to go in with water and smooth out that transition. Alright, there we go. It's the transition all nicely done there around the entirety of the boot. Last thing we have to do is the bottom. It's looking a little worse for wear. I'm just going to take some water and smooth all of this out down here. As you're smoothing out the sides, you tend to get a lot on the bottom, or like squeeze out on the bottom as it's sitting on the table. So this is basically tucking all that in and making it a nice surface again. Because eventually, once these dry, because we're going to leave these dry overnight, we're going to be putting a rubber sole here. Looks like it's about as good as it's going to get. There. There's the bottom sole. Now to let this dry, I'm actually going to use a clamp. I'm going to clamp this to the table by this part so the boot hangs over and has a chance to dry. Here are the two boots. This was the one we just did. This is the one I did a little bit earlier. There's a couple of fingerprints from sanding dust. About that. And once these are dry, we're going to coat them in Hex Flex, and then we're going to put the rubberized sole on the bottom. I might flip that order. I might do the sole first and then coat this. But yeah, now I'm going to wait overnight for these to finish drying.
Incoming transmission feature update number 2. For this piece, I let the boots here sit overnight, and what I found is that wasn't enough. Through the entirety of the rest of the video, the foam clay was still kind of squishy, and because of that, when I did the final try, or when I tried them on the final time, I had some bubbling happen. Air was trying to escape from under the boot into the sides of the boot, and on top of that, the foam clay, as I stepped on it, was still a little bit squishy and moved a little bit, which is what resulted in the uneven finish. So what I recommend is let it sit for as long as you need until the foam clay is completely hard and not squishy at all. It might be 24 hours, it might be a couple of days. It entirely depends on like where they're drying, what the environment is, but make sure your foam clay is completely dry before moving forward. You should avoid some of the issues that I ran into. Anyway, let's get back to the video and see how this turned out.
And for that, I have this rubberized like replacement sole matting. It's like diamond textured. I'm going to trace the shoes on. I've already traced this one side here. And I'll mark this. I've marked everything else. Even though I won't be able to see it, but there's 2 of these traced. And now I'm going to cut this out. To do that, let's see if I have some. To do that, I must get a tool from my truck. Alright, I couldn't find the tool that I wanted, so I will use the tool that I have. Now, this is going to be blasphemy for some. I have an old pair of fingers that I inherited that are super dull, and I got them that way, so they are now regular scissors, and not sewing scissors because of sins of their past. Basically, any scissor will work. I found scissors or tin snips works really well for cutting rubber. Alright, there's one. Now you just cut out the other one, and then we can reinstall them onto the bottom of the shoe. Just a little bit of a side note, I'm going to take the Dremel here. I want to soften the edges up a little bit. I'm going to do this on really low speed, and this is just to clean them up. It's a personal preference. No one's ever going to see this. It's just that I will feel happier about that, being a little more clean. Alright, so now it's the morning. We have our rubber boot soles that we just cut out. The other boots are now dry, so it's time to glue these together. I did a little tester here for adhesives. I tried a few, and contact cement actually worked the best to hold these rubber soles on, which I mean, I thought it would, but it was wanted to do some testing before I tried to assemble these. So now I just have to glue them on. Start by gluing the soles. I'm really just trying to get full coverage here. Alright, there we go. Now we have to swap around and do the boot side. have to go wait for these to dry for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can install the soles. Now we're ready to attach the soles. Just like that. That is now rubber sole in our boot. Those are our lifts. Now we just gotta do hex flex around the edges here. Alright, so for the paint, I'm gonna be using this stuff. It's called Hex Flex. I did have to get it. It used to be supplied in the US. I don't know if it still is. I had to get this bottle from overseas a while ago when I bought it. But I will, if I can find a link, I will link it in the description as to where I got it. And then I have this little small jug here, or a small bottle here that I washed out and filled with this stuff, so it's a little easier. Alright. Take this and we're basically just painting it over all of the foam clay. We're gonna do a couple of coats of this stuff, and this is gonna seal up that EVA foam. There's one. So I'm just gonna do that to the other one, and wait for it to dry. And I'll show you when they're all done. Alright, so we're finally done with both boots. I finished painting the foam clay on the side with Hex Flex. I did 3 good coats of this stuff. So now it's really smooth, it's pretty soft, and now we're gonna try these on. Also, you can see I have the rubber soles on the bottom, so they should hold up pretty well. They're pretty heavy, so I'm gonna get some socks on instead of my sandals so I can try this on. Try these on, and I'm also gonna have to tie these boots too. I'm the truth, I really don't want to break these things. Alright. Holy cow. Those are some big lifts. It looks like there's a couple of spots the foam clay didn't set or it's starting to rest. I'm gonna go back and just like push that stuff in. At the end of the day, they're meant to function. And I would say they did a job quite well. Let's do a measurement test. I just measured myself against the wall. I'm 79 inches with the boots on, which means I'm gonna be about 80 inches with the helmet on, because it adds about an inch. Yeah, it's 4 inches right on the dot for my lifts, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted. If you're doing this yourself, as I'm standing on these, I'm seeing some bubbling. It looks like some air is trapped in between the boot where it's starting to rest. That air is trying to escape. I'm sure that it will come to a spot where it's comfortable with. I'm gonna actually just pop the bubbles real quick to help that air escape. And there's probably better ways to do this without using the foam clay. I chose the foam clay for aesthetic reasons, mainly because I didn't really want to use a hard clay. I also probably should have waited, or could have waited longer for the foam clay to set before trying to stand on it, but the actual soles and the hot glue section are really what hold the weight up. So that's really what's important. You can decide to skin it however you want. If you make your own. I've never done this foam clay method before, so now I've learned. But these work. They're functional and they're pretty freaking comfy. So that's all that really matters. For reference, this is me in my main entryway. Let me stand right under it. That's all the space I have between me and the ceiling here. So, yeah, that's fairly tall. Okay, that concludes our video for the Spartan risers. These are going to be the base of my Mark 7 boots. Also, special thanks to Zenghilios for doing the editing. He does all the editing here on the channel, and he does an exceptional job. So all the jokes, all the memes, that's all him. Great stuff.
I have failed you,
Pip Ninja.
I have failed you.
But yeah, if you want to make your own, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on any of the socials. I will post a bunch of the links in the description for the tools and materials that I used. And if you have ideas of how to do it better, or use better products, or you guys make your own, let me know either in the comments or tag me on social media so I can see what you guys did and how to better improve in the future. Until then, I will see you guys in the next one. And if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, and you will get notified of when I put out videos, because there's going to be a lot more coming here soon.